Hello, Thunder Wizards. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Arudha Lagna. This is the Arudha Lagna series, planets in houses in the Arudha Lagna. And right now we're talking about the third house. So we're going to be talking about different planets in the third house. Today we're going to be talking about what if your Arudha Lagna is moon in the third house. So if you're not familiar with what an Arudha Lagna is, or if you don't know what your Arudha Lagna is, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com to get your own reading. Hit subscribe and hit the bell button so that you can get notified when we do get to what your Arudha is, because eventually we will get to it. So remember, this is Vedic astrology, not Western. Western astrology, when when I was a kid, you open up the newspaper, now you go online or you have an app on your phone and boink, you're born on this day, you're a Virgo. September 17th, you're a Virgo. That's Western astrology. That's not what this is. The calculations are very different. So don't try and take your Western chart and apply it to this. It won't work. Okay? So the Arudha Lagna, for those of you who don't know, Lagna means the ascendant. And in Vedic astrology, we use the ascendant or the rising sign for your sign. The reason for that is that when you were born, the moment that you popped out, you were hit with the light of the ascendant. So the star constellation that was rising at the moment of your birth put a stamp on you. And this was going to be your vantage point. How you view your world and how you interact with your karmas is based on your lagna, your rising sign, your ascendant. And so this is how you interface with the world. Your vantage point is how you look at your world, right? You're a lot of different things. You're your moon sign, you're your sun sign, you're all different kinds of things. So your true personality is what is interfacing with your external world. So you look at your lagna, your ascendant, like your soul is your true identity, which is actually infinite. It doesn't have an identity. So it takes on an interface, an avatar. So I was born with a Leo ascendant. My avatar is Leo. That's how I interact with my world and how I interact with my karmas. But I have a costume that I wear in the world, and that is my Arudha. Arudha is loosely translated as reflection. I like to use the word projection, but what it literally means is mount, like when you mount a horse. So it means that your Arudha gives power to your ascendant. Now, it's called the reflection because when somebody first meets you, they don't see you as your ascendant. Your ascendant is your vantage point, right? That's not how they see you, even though that's how you operate in the world. Like I operate in the world as a Leo. But even though that's the way I operate, that's not how people see me. Your reflection, your Arudha, is absolutely essential for your success in your career, your business, making money, and even on a personal level, because that's the first connection that people have is with your, I like to call it your superpower. What I've learned about the Arudha is that some people really identify with their Arudha, so it's very easy for them to portray that. Some people like me, they have conflict with it. They fight with their Arudha and that causes them problems. So one of the things that you can be sure of is that if you are in conflict with your Arudha, you will have blocks to your success. I had blocks to my success my entire life until I embraced my Arudha and I started expressing and presenting myself. I'm doing that right now. Sleeveless t-shirt, bald head, lifting weights, all of the spiritual looking regalia. That is my costume. It's my Arudha. So you have one as well. If your Arudha is the moon in the third house, we are going to be talking about that. Now, if you don't know where your moon is, again, get a Vedic reading, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. Or you can just type in, you can go get free Vedic chart, and you can type in your info, and you'll find out where your planets are. Doesn't mean you know what to do with that information, but at least you can find out. But to calculate the Arudha, you can find that out too, but usually you have to have some knowledge of Vedic astrology to be able to do that. So if you want to do that, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. Okay, so your superpower. Now, if you have Moon as your Arudha, this is actually very powerful because in Vedic astrology, even though we focus on the ascendant as your sign, that's your sign from then on. We look at your ascendant sign, that's your sign. The second most important, and depending on who you talk to, it may even be more important. And in some instances, it is even more important. Some Vedic astrologers use the moon sign as your ascendant because the moon is so important, because the moon is your mind and your emotions, your emotional and mental state. Now, the mind is not the intellect. Most of the time in Western society, when people use the word mind, they mean intellect. And intellect is not the mind. The intellect is the software that your hardware, your brain uses in order to interface with three-dimensional reality. Without your intellect, you wouldn't know what to do, where to go. You wouldn't be able to speak. You wouldn't be able to know which side of the road to drive on. You wouldn't, because the mind is the reflection of the soul. So the mind, the moon, is connected to being able to connect holistically. So the moon is the emotions and the mind, the intuition, the life force energy. Anytime you do any kind of breath work or you do qigong or yoga, anything like that, you're connecting to the power of the moon. The moon, when you meditate, you see things from a higher perspective. You're able to connect, you're able to empathize. So the moon represents empathy, intuition, nurturing, healing, the healing waters of the mother, the feminine. This is the power of the moon. So if your moon is also your Arudha, it means that people, when they first meet you, they interact, they connect with your mind first. That's the first thing that they see about you is your mind. Now, this is an interesting place. So in this situation, as I said, some people are really connected to their Arudha, some people aren't, and most people are somewhere in some spectrum. But what I've found is that my experience is that everybody on some level fantasizes about being their Arudha. So for instance, my Arudha, Mars in the third house in Libra. Mars in the third house means that you have fighting power. It means that you are probably a good martial artist. You're one of those one-punch guys, right? That's Mars in the third house. I'm in Libra. It makes me, Libra is the sign of mediation. So I am a spiritual counselor that is also a warrior. I'm the warrior of balance, the warrior of protection, the warrior of healing. That's what all this is about. So the third house has a lot to do with the hands. So if you have moon in the third house, there's a good chance that you have healing power in your hands. You may be a masseuse, you may do Reiki, you may do Qigong healing, but there's probably, when you touch people, there's probably healing power in your hands. The moon in the third house is very multifaceted. The third house is the natural placement of Gemini, the third sign, which is a Mercury sign. So remember I said that the moon is not the intellect. The moon is something else. But when the moon comes into the house of the intellect, which Gemini is the external expression, talking, speaking, writing, putting wisdom into words, poetry, acting, any kind of presentation of spiritual concepts or deep concepts and putting it into words, trying to figure things out. So the moon is kind of at odds with itself, which is the moon wants to be all encompassing. It wants to accept and see the interconnections, but it's now in the house of the intellect. And so here the moon now wants to act like the intellect. So it makes the moon a little bit energized because the third house is the house of your it is the house of your bravery, and it is the house of your energy. So you can see how powerful somebody's life force is in the third house. So the moon here makes somebody makes their mind energized. It makes the moon, but the moon, like I'm talking right now, the moon is all over the place. It doesn't stay in one place for very long. It gets bored. So your mind mind acts like the intellect, and it wants to jump from one thing to the next. So these people tend not to stay in one job for too long because the mind needs creativity. And so you're jumping from one creative project to the next. Now, this is a great placement for writers because now the moon wants to act like the intellect and take deep concepts and put them into words. It wants to figure them out and put them into words. So the third house is one of the houses where we see writers, again with the hands, you write with the hands. And that's because, and specifically the kind of writing we're doing is repetitive writing. This is not the house for somebody who's going to write the great novel of the 21st century. This is the house of somebody who writes blogs, vlogs, YouTube, somebody who's a broadcaster, a producer, somebody who television series, writes for television, is a news anchor. You know, you don't watch a news anchor once, you watch them every day. So this is the kind of writing that, so since my Arudha is the third house, it's not moon, but you see, I crank out the books really fast. They're not very long. And I do a lot of YouTube. So this is what the moon wants to do here as well. Now, the moon is in an interesting place because it aspects the ninth house of spirituality. So there's going to be a lot of emotional and creative input that's going to want to funnel spirituality, regardless of what you do. Now, the reason why I'm going on and on about this is because the moon is like its own lagna. Because one of the things you do, first thing you do is you look at the ascendant, and then the next thing you want to do is you want to look at the moon, because that's where the emotions are. That's where the mind is. And we tend to be, you know, where our mind is where we focus a lot of our desires and a lot of our interests. So this is like, you know, the lagna itself. So in this case, the person with moon in the third house is probably going to have a strong connection to this. So it's not going to be as much of a struggle for this person to become their Arudha. Remember, your Arudha is your costume. It's the costume that your lagna wears when it interfaces with the public. And it is, as I've said in previous videos, it is the way people already see you, and it's the way that they want to see you. So with people who struggle with their Arudha, it can be a problem because if you don't present yourself as your Arudha, people will mistrust you and they will resent you and they will want to block your success because your Arudha is their healing. And if you don't present their healing, they're going to feel that you're holding out on them and they won't trust you. So people with moon in the third house tend to already relate to this, and they like to express this. So this isn't as big of a leap. But in case you do have issues with your Arudha, you need to know more about it so you can really let that shine. Okay, so let's see, what else do we want to say about that? So this is a really interesting placement for the moon. This would have been a bad placement for the moon, 1,000 years ago. But now in modern times with the internet, we've got so much information. The mind wants to go in a bunch of different places. So it likes to go on to the internet. It likes to write. It likes to have, doing multiple things, multitask. It's a frenetic place for the moon, but in modern times, it's actually a pretty good place for success. So remember, your success is based upon you empowering your Arudha. Once you know what your Arudha is, then I recommend that you create a costume for yourself. I'm wearing part of my costume today, right? This is part of my costume because my Arudha is, as I said, the warrior of spirituality, the warrior of balance. So depending on what sign the moon is in is going to have a huge effect because the moon is very malleable. And the moon is very easily influenced by whatever planets are in there and by whatever signs and whatever planetary aspects. So really, especially for this Arudha, you need to know what sign is your moon in the third house. What is the planetary aspects? What are the sign aspects? What dasha are you going? What time period are you under right now? All of these things are going to have a very powerful effect on your moon because your moon is a reflector, right? Your moon is not a projector, it's a reflector. So it takes on whatever is around it. So if you don't know what sign your moon is in, if it's in the third house and what aspects, again, go to astrology.thunderwizard.com. One of the main things that we do in our readings is that we focus very heavily on the Arudha because for me, as I've found, the Arudha was the defining thing in my chart which gave me success. In fact, if somebody came to me and they said, listen, I don't have time for a full reading, I just want one thing, I would say, let's look at your Arudha because that will tell me how you're supposed to present yourself in your career. It might even tell me what your career is, and it'll show me how you are going to achieve success. So whatever it is your job is, even if you're, a librarian or if you're whatever, a house cleaner or an accountant or a janitor, it doesn't matter what you do. Whatever it is that you do for a living, if you have Mars in the third house, you need to present yourself as that multifaceted, creative, expressive mind. Okay? So hopefully you got what you needed out of that. If you want to learn my type of Vedic astrology and you want to become one of my certified astrologers, as you go to astrology.thunderwizard.com, you're going to see more than me. And these are people who have taken my certification, I've certified them, and they are an astrologer in their own right. You can create your own astrology business and you can also be featured on this webpage here. So if you want to get involved with that, then we have a special going on for the month of May only, which is, where'd that go? Hang on one second, which is 2for1.thunderwizard.com. You will get half off astrology certification and rune reading certification. So you'll get 2 for 1 for the month of May 2019. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to that site and click on the links to see what those certifications are about. All right, so that's it. Next time we are going to do whatever. We're going to stay with the third house and we'll do another planet in the third house. All right, for your Arudha. Talk to you soon.